Good afternoon, y'all. I am using my phone today instead of my iPad. Sometimes with my iPad, I can't really get it set up, and I have to always prop it up against something. So hopefully this will work better. And I'm also having some issues with the sound on my iPad. So today I'm starting a new series. It's called The Last Sheep in the Gate. And so this is talking about when Jesus rode into the temple, into Jerusalem, going to the temple. It's probably going to take me maybe a week, 2 weeks to really get through this lesson, because there's a lot of information. There's a lot of background and history that I'm wanting to teach with this. But I do want to read out of Matthew chapter 21, and then we'll get on into some of it. This is called the triumphal entry. And when they drew nigh unto Jerusalem, and were come to Bethphage, unto the Mount of Olives, then sent Jesus 2 disciples, saying unto them, Go into the village over against you, and straightway ye shall find an ass tied, and a colt with her. Loose them, and bring them unto me. And if any man say aught unto you, ye shall say, The Lord hath need of them, and straightway he will send them. And this was done, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet, saying, Tell ye the daughter of Sion, Behold, thy king cometh unto thee, meek, and sitting upon an ass, and a colt the foal of an ass. And the disciples went and did as Jesus commanded them. Okay, and then I'm going to skip a couple of verses, and I'm going to go down to verse 8, and it says, And a very great multitude spread their garments in the way. Others cut down branches from the trees, and strawed them in the way. And the multitude that went before and that followed cried, saying, Hosanna, the Son of David, blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. Alright, and I'm going to stop right there for now. And I'm going to read out of my big book that I have. It's this is just a big super giant print concordance that I have that goes with the King James Version Bible. I've had this for quite some time. It was given to me and Shannon, and I get a lot of information out of it. But it says, the entry of Jesus into the city of Jerusalem was on the Sunday prior to his crucifixion. And you can find all of the triumphal entries in Matthew 21, Mark 11, Luke 19, and John 12. Since the palm branches were placed before him, this day is often called Palm Sunday, and we do celebrate Palm Sunday. Most of the apostolics or apostolic Pentecostals, they do celebrate Palm Sunday. It's before Easter. Christ did not enter Jerusalem upon a war horse of conquest like they all thought that he would, or like some, would expect he would, but instead he rode in upon a donkey or a colt, and that represented humility. It represented peace. Back then they were not thinking spiritually, they were thinking more fleshly. So to them, they thought Jesus, he was come to overthrow the Roman Empire. They thought he's going to be our new king. They thought, he's going to do away with all these taxes, They didn't have the mindset spiritually. So whenever he come riding in on the donkey, that represented peace. He was bringing peace. He was, it represented humility. All right, and then I am just going to read what I had wrote and been studying on. I'm going to read, first off, Genesis 3:21. Says, Unto Adam also and to his wife did the Lord God make coats of skins, and clothe them. And the Lord God said, Behold, the man is become as one of us, to know good and evil. And now lest he put forth his hand, and take also of the tree of life, and eat, and live forever. Therefore the Lord God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden, to till the ground from whence he was taken. Okay, and then I want to read Genesis 4:4. And Abel he also brought of the firstlings of his flock, and of the fat thereof, and the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering. Now, let's back up to Genesis 3, and why I read this, that unto Adam God made coats of skins and clothed them. Okay, so from the very beginning, we see God, he had to make a sacrifice. He had to make a sacrifice to cover their guilt and their shame. This was for Adam and Eve. It was to cover up their nakedness. So we see here that God kills the first animal and made a coat of skin to clothe them. This was their covering that he made for them. Alright, and then we see in 4, Cain and Abel, they also brought unto the Lord an offering to the Lord. This was considered a gift or a sacrifice for Cain and Abel. Alright, and then also we see Noah building an altar that had a pleasing aroma to God after the flood, and it was offered as a sacrifice. I'm going to read Genesis 8, 20 through 21. Alright, let me just back up to 20. And Noah builded an altar unto the Lord, and took every clean beast, and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor. And the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more everything living as I have done. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. So this was after the flood, when Noah and his family got off the ark. We see Noah builds this altar for the Lord, and then he takes the clean beast and he makes a sacrifice. And whenever the Lord sees this, he says in his heart that it's a sweet savor. It's very sweet smelling. This was very pleasing to God. And then he decides he's going to make a covenant with man that he will no longer completely destroy an entire nation or the entire world at one time, right away. Now this does not mean that hardships won't come or tribulations won't come where we see death, because we know that happens today. We see flooding, we see earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, different things. But the Bible tells us that in this world you shall have tribulation. This just means that he will not again curse the ground, and he's not going to destroy everything all at once again until the end time. Alright? And so this was a covenant ceremony from God. Alright? And then we see God testing Abraham in a covenant ceremony for Abraham. Genesis 15, 9 and 10. And he said unto him, this is God talking to Abram, and he said unto him, take me an heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he took unto him all these, and divided them in the midst, and laid each one against another. But the birds divided he not. And when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, Abram drove them away. When the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and lo, an horror of great darkness fell unto him. And he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve I will judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance. So we see here God making a covenant with Abram, and he is making his covenant. But we see him making this covenant with Abram. He tells him, that he is going to make his seed many as the stars in the heavens and as much as the sand in the sea. And that's where it first, I say where it first started. We know it started in Genesis, but this is where God is leading up to sending Jesus. Hence the title of my message, The Last Sheep of the Gate. This is where God is making the covenant, and this is where he is first starting to form his plan and give man the plan that he is planning on sending Jesus to earth to be the sacrificial lamb. But the first thing that he does is he sets up these covenants with different people in the Bible, and he is getting them to build altars, and he gives them a temporary plan of redemption, if you will. So we see also that God tests Abraham's faith when he tells him to sacrifice Isaac. And I'm not going to read this because this is pretty lengthy. I would have read it, but like I said, I've been having some trouble today, feeling dizzy. But if you want to go back and read Genesis 22, I believe it's 1 through 13, that is where God tells Abraham, where at this time his name is still Abram, but he tells him, to go sacrifice Isaac. And if you go and read that, then you will find out that Abram goes to sacrifice him, but then God sends a ram in a bush or in a thicket. And so then he doesn't have to sacrifice his son. Then God knows this is a man that I can trust right here. All right? And I want to actually read Acts chapter 7. And this is a pretty lengthy, but this is the closest thing that I could find that actually gives some of the history without having to go back and read all through Genesis and Exodus and Leviticus and all that. So this was in Acts. This was the defense of Stephen. We see Stephen here talking to the high priest. And I'm going to start at verse 2, Acts 7 verse 2. And he said, Men, brethren, and fathers, hearken, or listen to me. The God of glory appeared unto Father Abraham, talking about Jesus, appearing to Abraham, when he was in Mesopotamia before he dwelt in Charan, and said unto him, Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred, and come into the land which I will show thee. Then he came out of the land of the Chaldeans and dwelt in Charan, and from thence, when his father was dead, he removed him into this land wherein ye now dwell. Then he gave him none inheritance in it, no, not so much as to set his foot on. Yet he promised that he would give it to him for a possession, and to his seed after him, when as yet he had no child. So this is Stephen talking to the high priest. He's kind of telling them the backstory. And he's like, God chose Abraham. And he chose Abraham, and he told him that he would, give him an inheritance, and it would be for his seed after him. This is God putting in the plan, again, to send Jesus. And God spake on this wise, that his seed should sojourn in a strange land, and that they should bring them into bondage, and entreat them evil 400 years. And he gave him the covenant of circumcision. And so Abraham begat Isaac, and circumcised him the 8th day. And Isaac begat Jacob, and Jacob begat 12 patriarchs. So if you'll go back and you can read in Genesis chapter 25, starting in verse 19. This tells the whole entire story, but I don't want to read all through that because that's going to be pretty long. So let me just talk to you about the 12 patriarchs. So sorry about that. Well, if y'all want to know what I did, I accidentally kicked my tripod over. Okay, tribes of Israel. It says, descendants of the 12 sons of Jacob. The sons were born to Jacob's wives, Leah and Rachel, and to their maids, Zilpah and Bilhah. The sons of Leah included Reuben, Simon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun, and one daughter named Dinah. Rachel's sons were Joseph and Benjamin. And then Jacob's sons through Zilpah, Leah's maid, were Gad and Asher, while Bilhah, the maid of Rachel, bore Dan and Naphtali. Okay, so those are the 12 patriarchs. They're known as the 12 tribes of Israel, or that's what we all know them by today, is the 12 tribes of Israel. And why is that? It's because God changed Jacob's name to Israel. Growing up, whenever I was a child, and even a teenager, and even a young adult, I did not realize that the Israel in the Bible was talking about a man. I always thought it was talking about the country Israel, but it's actually talking about a man. And I want to read that to y'all. Get this pulled up real quick. Genesis 32. This is called Jacob's wrestling at Peniel. I guess that's how you pronounce this, Peniel. Starting at verse 24. And Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him unto the breaking of the day. And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he said, Let me go, for the day breaketh. And he said, I will not let thee go, except thou bless me. And he said unto him, What is thy name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, Thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince hast thou power with God and with men, and hast prevailed. So here he was. This was after he had left his father-in-law's place, and they're coming back to meet his brother Esau. And as he was at Peniel, it said a man wrestled with him, but we know that this was an angel from the Lord. And so Jacob told him, he said, I'm not going to let you go until you bless me. And so the angel blesses him, and then the angel names him Israel. And this is how we get the 12 tribes of Israel. And these 12 tribes of Israel, this is who God has planned his covenant with. And actually, Jesus comes from the tribe of Judah. And we'll get into that on a later lesson. Again, we see Jacob's wives. He has Leah and Rachel. So whenever Jacob, or Israel, before he was Israel, he was Jacob, whenever he went to find a wife, his mother wanted him to take a wife out of her family. So he goes into his mother's brother's house and finds a wife. And whenever he gets there, he sees Rachel first. He sees Rachel out by the well, and he just automatically just falls in love with her. She's beautiful, and he sees her, and it's just like love at first sight. He loves her, and he wants to marry her. Well, her father tells him that he has to work, for 7 years, to marry her. And so he works the 7 years, but then he doesn't get to marry her, but instead, he winds up marrying Leah. And so whenever he wakes up in the morning and he realizes that it's not Rachel that he's with, but Leah, he's pretty ticked off. And, you can imagine, that you would be pretty mad too if you would have been deceived like that, But Jacob's name means deceiver. That's his name. And before that, we see him, he doesn't, his brother sells him his birthright, but he deceives his father, and that's where the name deceiver, or why his name means deceiver, is because he deceives his father. And his father gives him his brother's blessing. But a lot of people says he steals his brother's birthright. No, he don't. He didn't steal his brother's birthright. His brother was coming in from hunting, and he's like, I'm starving to death. Sometimes I'm like that. I tell Shannon I'm starving to death, when in reality I'm just hungry, and I'm not starving to death. But if you're hungry, you can do some pretty stupid stuff. People think with their stomach and not their brain. So he actually sells him his birthright. He didn't just steal it from him. Now, he does steal his blessing from his father. When his father is on his deathbed, he actually does get his father to bless him. And then we see him marrying, he has to work another 7 years to marry Rachel. But he doesn't wait 7 years to marry Rachel. He actually marries Rachel within the next week after he marries Leah. So he gets 2 wives within the span of 2 weeks. And you can go back and you can read that. And to me it's a pretty good little love story, but it's a real love story. And I'm going to read through this again. So Jacob, with Leah, had Reuben, and I said Simon, but it actually, I think, is pronounced Simeon. So Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Levi is the priestly tribe, and then Judah And Judah is where Jesus' descendants come from. So Judah come from Leah. Issachar and Zebulun, and then they had a daughter named Dinah. But back then, women did not have rights like men did. So that's why she's not included into the 12 patriarchs, because the man is considered the head. And I'm not going to get into all that in today's lesson or in any of the lessons at this point. But this is why that Dinah was not included. And then Rachel had Joseph and Benjamin. And then, of course, Joseph is the one that is sold off into slavery. All right. And then, of course, each of them gave their maids to him to wife. So jealous of each other. These sisters, they were so jealous of each other that they fought over everything. And it was mainly because Jacob was deceived into marrying Leah, and he didn't even home. And I'm sorry, my internet's wanting to cut out now. Y'all see the devil's fighting me hard. So, each of the tribe would receive an allotment of land in Canaan, except for Joseph's two sons. Each received an allotment. The Levites did not receive any. Their portion was service to the Lord, and their income was the tithes of the other tribes. Reuben, Gad, and half of the Manasseh received their inheritance in the Transjordan. When the kingdom was divided between Rehoboam and Jeroboam, 10 tribes formed the northern kingdom, and only Benjamin remained with Judah. And so, you can go back and read that in 2 Chronicles 11, and that's, talking about what land that they would receive after the wilderness. So, I'm going to get into a whole lot more history tomorrow. I just wanted to give y'all a little bit of back history about the 12 tribes or the 12 patriarchs, so y'all would know that y'all would know that this is where Jesus came from. And I'm actually going to go through a lot of the different sacrifices and different stuff like that. I just feel like this is what God is wanting me to teach on. And I'm sorry that today has not really been a great lesson. I may go over some more of this tomorrow when I'm feeling a lot better. Like I said, I just feel like the devil is always trying to keep me from doing these Bible studies. Either I'm sick with a headache or dizziness or something going on in my body, but I rebuke that in the name of Jesus, because the Bible tells us that by His stripes we are healed and made whole. So the title of this series, again, is The Last Sheep in the Gate, and that's talking about Jesus. And the last thing that I want to read is going to be Hebrews chapter 8. And the title of this is called Superiority of the New Covenant. Okay? And I'm going to read Hebrews 8, 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 10, and 13. So 1, 2, 3, and then 6 and 7. Now of the things which we have spoken, this is the psalm. We have such an high priest who is set on the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens. And that's a minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle, which the Lord pitched, and not man. Again, talking about Jesus. Jesus is the true minister of the sanctuary. He is the true tabernacle. For every high priest is ordained to offer gifts and sacrifices. Wherefore it is of necessity that this man, talking about Jesus, have somewhat also to offer. Read 6 and 7. But now hath he obtained a more excellent ministry, by how much also he is the mediator of a better covenant, which was established upon better promises. For if that first covenant had been faultless, then should no place have been sought for the second. So let's discuss that a minute. Okay, he obtained a more excellent ministry, a better covenant. So Jesus is a better covenant. When he dies on the cross, he is the perfect covenant. Because the first covenant did have fault. It tells you here, had it been faultless, then there would have been no reason for the second covenant, would have been no reason for Jesus coming back. But the first covenant, which is all the sacrifices and stuff that God, made them do, this is the covenant that he made with Abraham, with Isaac, with Jacob's 12, sons. They were to do all these animal sacrifices. This was the covenant. This was what was going to cover their sins. This was a temporary covenant. And it was very faulty because they had to keep doing it over and over and over and over. It was daily. It was every single day, a ritual, a thing that they had to do constantly. Y'all, we have it so easy today because we don't have to get up. We don't have to slaughter animals. We don't have to raise these perfect, clean animals to slaughter, to sacrifice to God. We have it so easy. All we have to do is go to God in prayer. That's all we have to do. Alright? So we know that the first covenant was very faulty. Had it been faultless, then there would have been no reason for the second covenant, which was Jesus dying on the cross. Okay? And then I want to read 10 and 13. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws into their mind and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a God, and they shall be my people. In that he saith, a new covenant he hath made. The first is old. Now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away. So, whenever Jesus died on the cross, this old covenant, all these sacrificial lambs, all these sacrifices, they were old. They decayed, they waxed old, they vanished away. He did away with them. So now we have Jesus. Jesus is our mediator. He was the perfect sacrifice. He literally was the last sheep in the gate. And I will, like I said, I may go over some of this again tomorrow before really getting into this, really getting into the covenant that he made with all of the Israelites, because that's what I'm going to be teaching on. I'm going to be teaching on the covenant, from God to the Israelites, and then I'm going to really dig in to Jesus being the last sheep in the gate. I hope y'all enjoyed today's lesson. Like I said, I'm so sorry that I knocked my tripod over. But other than that, I think it was okay. I hope y'all got some good information. I hope that y'all understood it. Feel free to message me, comment, and I will message back. Go back and read, the story of all of that, about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Esau. Go back and read the story about Jacob and his wives. Those are really good stories to read. I will see y'all tomorrow. Y'all have a great day.